out together, but hopefully, check you've got that done. So chapter 9, I'm grabbing one of my trusty copies. I have several, and I think I mentioned I sent a copy to my brother in Monterey, California, and he is an IT. He is not a reader, but he loved this book, and he crushed it in a week, and it has so many questions, and always likes to ask what my students think of it. So, what's going on in chapter 9? I have some images to remind me and you um, what's happened in this chapter, and this is Lydia and Jack. I mean, that's why I have the car. I'm not saying that's what his car looked like, but that's a 70s car. You'd have lots of them smoking, talking, and we need to remember he's always turning the conversation around to Nath. And she doesn't understand that, but we know later on that Jack's actually in love with Nath, and that all these liaisons with girls are just a cover. Just one second. So in this chapter, she's also getting so much pressure from her mother. And she's doing that balancing act of so scared her mother's going to leave again because the mother left when they were children. So she's trying to be who her mother wants her to be, but that's not who she is. And then when she sees information come in the mail, right, for Nath about how his transition to Harvard, his welcome letter, I mean, he's already been admitted, but it's more material. She starts to rip it almost subconsciously because Nath is the one who understands what she's going through and she doesn't want him to leave. But he sees her ripping it and, of course, thinks she's just a diabolical sibling who's jealous. And he says, I can't wait to get out of here. So she's dealing with that pain. And one of the most important symbols, in addition to, like we've talked about, eggs and food, and especially the lake itself, but the other important symbol is this locket that her father gives her. And we get some story on the locket right here. So I'm going to pages 226 and 227. And it's just so important. In the beginning, she thinks she's getting a present, right? That it's not a tip like that she needs to be a doctor. It's not a stethoscope or a book or her father giving her a book like, oh, how to win friends and influence people. It seems like a genuine present. The necklace she had longed for at Christmas. The chain slid through her fingers like a stream of water, so light that almost felt alive. James touched her dimple with a fingertip and twisted it, an old joke of his. It opens. Lydia flipped the locket open and froze. Inside were two pictures the size of her thumbnail, one of her father and one of her, dolled up for the ninth grade dance the year before. All the way home, she had told him what a wonderful time she'd had. The photo of her father smiled broadly, fondly, expectantly. The photo of herself looked away, serious and resentful. I know this year has been tough, and your mother's been asking a lot of you, James said. Just remember, school isn't everything. It's not as important as friendship or love. So we find out that that dance, she went to and just stood there and was miserable and just did it for her dad. And he thinks she had this great time. So the images inside are just reminders of what he expects from her, right? He wants her to be social and to blend in a way he never did. Reminds her of that miserable night. And it just reminds her that he doesn't really see his daughter. He sees what he wants her to be. So that locket, continues to be significant. Moving on slowly, hopefully, if I can get the computer to behave, to chapter 10. So we've gone future when Lydia's passed away. I know there's lots of sliding back and forth through time, but this is after Marilyn's found out about the affair, and that's why I have the image of her and James fighting. She confronts him about it. Again, we know she went to the apartment, and Lydia answered the door, and she knew James was inside, but things didn't really go past that. But the big fight ensues. So why don't we just go there? So I'm going to 243, and we see how much that they just don't say each other and don't understand each other. So she's talking about Lydia and how she's so young and malleable and will give up her career for James and if he wants to marry her. So this is 243. Well, now you can marry this one, Marilyn says. She seems like the serious type. You know what that means. She holds up her left hand where the wedding ring glints dully. A girl like that wants the whole package. Matchbox house, picket fence, 2.3 kids. She lets out one hard, sharp, terrifying bark of a laugh. And out on the landing, Hannah hides her face against Nate's arm. I suppose she'll be more than happy to trade student life for all that. I just hope she doesn't regret it. At this word, regret, something in James flares. A hot, biting smell like overheating wires pricks his nostrils. Like you do? A sudden and stunned silence. Though Hannah's face is still pressed into Nate's shoulder, she can picture her mother exactly, her face frozen, the rims of her eyes a deep red. Pardon me. If she cries, Hannah thinks, it won't be tears, it will be little drops of blood. Get out, Marilyn says at last. Get out of this house. So everything's exploded between them, all the misunderstandings, all the loss they feel about their daughter. James takes off. And I have this symbol here of the sign for Toledo because when Marilyn left 2 years earlier, that's where she went. And that's when he kind of realizes he's running away just like she had. And he turns around and returns to his family. We know that that happens. I have a picture of the periodic table of elements because this is when Marilyn goes into Lydia's room and starts to see Lydia for who she actually was, right? She rips down the elements, the Einstein postcard, and she finds the cookbook that Lydia said she lost. And she realizes her daughter didn't want to be a doctor. She just wanted to be close to her mother. And a lot of regret floods in as well as a lot of realizations. The picture of whiskey is that Nate is looking for a way to escape, right? His sister died. He has so much regret about how they ended things, their last conversation. We'll get to that. His parents seem like they're splitting up. He doesn't know what to do, so he buys whiskey. And there's this touching, dark scene at the liquor store where he's encountered lots of racism and looks when he goes places, both as being Asian American, because there's not many of those in the community, and as a weirdo. Oh, your sister died. That must be weird. But the owner just says, "Oh, you're the one who lost his sister," and just gives it to him for free. And I don't think Nathan's even old enough to buy it, but it's just the idea of, it's just a moment of empathy, right? And we know that this is not the way to escape your problems. And another moment of community empathy is, of course, when Nath gets drunk and he's laying passed out in the car on the side of the road, that, the detective, I think it's Fisk, just takes care of him, right? Just shows him compassion, calls him son, brings him home, and the next day brings the car detailed and clean. And that's just, I think, another sign of humanity and empathy that they hadn't really seen in the community before. Going to chapter 11. So again, flashback, last days of, the very last day of Lydia's life, her birthday, and so on. We know the whole thing about how she failed her driver's test. We know that she desperately wants her brother and tries calling him at the college party, and that's the best picture I could find of a 1970s college party. And she's hurt and she's upset and she's calling her brother, and he's like, "Oh, what? Did mom want you to do homework or dad give you another present?" And he's buzzed and hangs up on her, and that's the last conversation they have and how much that hurts. She makes the decision partially to get back at Nath and just to defy what her parents want her to be, that she's going to sleep with Jack. I don't think she's even in love with Jack. She just made that decision, right? So she gets all dolled up for her birthday in her dress and her lipstick, and her dad's like, "Oh, you're going to break so many hearts." And she's in the car with Jack, and he finally reveals that, he's gay and he's in love with Nath. And she's threatens to, "I'm just going to tell everybody." And of course she doesn't mean that. She's just angry and hurt. There's also the important moment with the locket. She sees Hannah wearing it, and she rips it off her sister's neck and says, "Don't ever smile if you don't want to." Because Hannah just sees the necklace, right, as a symbol of mom and dad love you and they want pretty things for you. When, of course, Lydia, it's this weight of what her parents expect from her. And it's out of honestly love for her sister. She doesn't want her to live the way she's been living, like this performative life of trying to be what everyone wants her to be. And this is where we find out what happens to Lydia. And I'm interested in your thoughts. I can't wait to read your discussion board, because she goes out into the lake. She makes all these decisions. She's going to be a new person. And she dives in the water and she drowns. And I honestly think personally, she thought she was going to make it to shore and it was going to be this rebirth and she was going to conquer her fears, but it was night and she can't swim and it was a bad choice and it was foolish. My brother thinks she committed suicide, that it was all too much. I've never read it that way. So up to you. Finally, resolutions, chapter 12. I love when James returns home and he sees Hannah crying and lost and puts her on his back like piggyback and goes, "Where's Hannah? Where's Hannah?" Like he used to play with Lydia, almost like he's going to parent a daughter correctly this time around. There's the fight, right? Well, we both know, we all know James and Marilyn make up, and there's so many things that go unsaid that are finally, come to light. But the fight in that Nath sees Jack and chases him down. Jack assumes Lydia told Nate that he's in love with him. Of course, Lydia never did. Um, and Nate, I think part of him knows that Jack didn't hurt Lydia. He just needs to take his anger out on someone. And he ends up punching Jack, and Jack just lets him, and it's really sad. And Hannah breaks it up, and they all leave the woods and don't talk about it, like it's kind of been put behind them. Of course, there's the moment where, Jack is in the lake, and Nath is in the lake, and Jack symbolically reaches his arm in and helps him out. Like another symbol with the lake of kind of like a rebirth and starting over. So I'm going to 282, just so much going on in that chapter. Hopefully, lots of resolutions to come for the family and growth. So in 282, some things they will never discuss. James will never talk to Louisa again, and he will be ashamed of this for as long as he lives. Later, slowly, they will piece together other things that have never been said. He will show her, meaning Marilyn, the coroner's report. She will press the cookbook into his hands. How long it will be before he speaks to his son without flint in his voice. How long it will be before Nath no longer flinches when his father speaks. For the rest of the summer and for years after that, they will grope for the words that say what they mean, to Nath, to Hannah, to each other. There is so much they need to say. And so I think there is intended to be healing for this family. So many themes to think about, so many symbols, so many messages we can carry with us into our own lives. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the semester. Contact me with questions. I'm still going to have my office hours. I'm still here, but this is the last video. I'm signing off, and cheers to a crazy, crazy semester.